there's like some weird equivocation in the episode where like at the end, like Riker's like, oh, maybe that's how it stops. One boy just puts his gun down and refuses to kill. And I'm like, okay, but you're just accepting. He puts his gun down and then 2 armed guards go and grab him.
Take him away. So he put his gun down to go be taken to prison, to go back to being a prisoner when he was trying to fight for his freedom. Yeah, I know. You're
accepting as a given the violence of the state while condemning the retaliatory violence of the oppressed peoples. You know, it's like a kind of a Hamas situation where, like, I don't support Hamas. Hamas is an awful organization that does bad things, but Hamas only exists because of Israel's oppression of Palestine and the way that they've set the Gaza Strip into like an open air prison. And, you know, like, you understand why in these situations people might turn to bad people who are going to fight off your oppressors.
You've seen the best.
You've seen the worst.
Now here's the rest of both worlds.
I'm GayFesh. If I had words to make a day for you.
And I'm Ari, and I'd give you a morning, golden and new. I'm not going to sing.
And today we'll be discussing the Star Trek The Next Generation episodes The Hunted and The High Ground. But first, you made a bit of an impulsive purchase
I did.
A couple weeks ago, and it should be arriving next month. I saw that Star Trek was doing an officially licensed tridimensional set. Tridimensional chess set. And I just sent you the link because I know on a previous podcast you mentioned, oh, I might want to try and play that. And like
there was a point when we were Googling, remember? Because I was like, well, I want I want an official 3D chess, not something some nerd made in his basement, which is probably actually better than official. But I wanted it to be official, you know?
Right. And I sent it to you, and like 20 minutes later, you sent me a screenshot of order confirmation, and I was just like, I just sent you the link. It's like, oh, here's something to bookmark.
No, I was like, and it was a pre-order. And I was like, oh no, we need to learn to play this. This is where I'm at in my Star Trek experience. I snap purchased the 3D chess set, the original series one. It was like, it has like Spock and Kirk on it.
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
and just to give the viewers, like, or the listeners, an idea of what kind of an impulse buy this is, it's $175.
It was not cheap. No, it happened to be when I had some extra money in the bank, and I was like, what the heck? We're going to learn to play 3D chess. I'm really bad at regular chess, so maybe I'll be a genius at 3D chess. Who knows?
I don't think that's how that works. I think if you're bad at regular chess, you're probably going to be worse at this. I looked up the rules.
Someone told me when I was like 9 that you just sacrifice all your pawns, and then at the end I die because I don't have anything to block my guys that are important. So that's how I've played chess for 42 years of my life.
Yeah, so the rules, ostensibly, all of the pieces have the normal move rules, but they can also, like, move up or down one platform.
Do they have to be at the edge? I guess we'll find that out when we go to play.
Well, no, they have to be, like, because there's, like, 2 parts where the squares overlap, top and bottom. And so, like, you can move between one of those as you're moving your piece, and I don't think the vertical movement counts as part of the move. It's just like if you move diagonal, and your diagonal movement could be on the next platform as well, because they're both overlapping. You can move down, yeah. And then also there's the 2x2 square things at either end, and apparently those are like movable tiles. Like if there's only one piece that's yours on one of those things, you can actually move it from like the back of a board to the front of a board. So there's some movement there as well. And it
like looks, in Clue, when you can go between the kitchen and the library or whatever.
Yeah, it's that right there is going to be the one that messes me up the most, I think. But once you get it, we're definitely going to play it, and we're going to try to like film it, maybe like put that up as like a bonus video, us trying to figure out tridimensional chess,
because I think it's going to be hilarious. Yeah. But I'm really excited. I think it's going to be really fun. And, you know, the next thing that's going to happen in my life is I'm going to message you and be like, look, I bought this $1,000 replica Star Trek uniform. This is where I'm at in my life.
I think the most I have ever spent on a Star Trek cosplay was like Well, I've got Picard's suede jacket that he gets in season 5, and that was an official Star Trek replica. And then I paid a customer friend about the same amount of money, like $250, to make me a Star Trek Enterprise jumpsuit.
And that jumpsuit was really well made too for that price. That's a pretty good price.
Yeah, no, it's really good. It doesn't fit anymore. I've gotten significantly fatter since I had that, but
it's like that happens. Yeah.
So before we get into the episodes, why don't you hop on over, if you're feeling so generous, to patreon.com/restofbothworlds. You can get our episodes up to 5 days early if you are a member. And for the $10 tier, we will read your name at the end of each episode. Nobody's taken that one yet, so you could be the first.
You can be the first person.
With that, let's get into the episodes.
Today, we're talking about The Hunted, which is the 11th episode of the 3rd season, and it first aired on the 8th of January, 1990. It was written by Robin Bernheim and directed by Cliff Bull.
I think an alternate title for this episode could be Star Trek First Blood.
Yeah.
Because it's literally just like Rambo. Is what the episode is.
He could also be Star Trek Serenity, because he's very much River Tam as well.
Yeah, except that like in Serenity, the government was trying to kill her because she had government secrets.
True.
Whereas here, they're just like imprisoning the soldiers because they're like, well, it's peacetime now and you're too violent for us.
This is the will of the people.
Yeah, it's the will of the people. The people voted.
I know. I liked how they tried to bank on that.
So, there's a planet that is applying for Federation membership, and they're like, oh, everything seems nice. This planet looks idyllic. But then, like, a prisoner escapes from the Lunar 5 penal colony, and they ask the Enterprise if they can intercept him.
And the reason that they're there is to check and make sure they're ready to join the Federation, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And, like, they find out that this guy is, like, insanely good at avoiding them. He, like, takes his ship behind an asteroid and then like splits it in two. They can't get him on they can't get his life signs read. Right. And yeah, it turns out after they do manage to capture him in a hilarious scene where there's like, you could have played yakety sax over it. There's like 5 different security guards like trying to hold him down, and he's just tossing them around the room. Like,
is that the name of the Benny Hill song?
Yeah, kitty sex.
I knew when you said it what you meant, but I have never heard that title before.
There's just a great moment where like O'Brien is just standing there and he like hits the intercom and goes, more security, more security, more security.
Yeah. More security, more security, more security. I know, I laughed. I have that written down 3 times in my notes because I thought it was so funny.
He even is like, giving Worf a run for his money. But anyway, it turns out like they initially tell them there's like, oh, he's just a criminal, but then they can't find like a criminal record for him. And so they find out, oh, no, he's actually a soldier, because they had just gone through some wars. And like, well, we're a peaceful people. We didn't have soldiers, so we had to make them. And so they're conditioned and genetically modified so that they're stronger. And they could do all sorts of stuff. But in peacetime, well, they didn't know how to deprogram them. And so, like, it's, veterans coming home from the war with their PTSD getting set off and having violent outbursts sometimes. And instead of giving them the help that they need, they just ship them off so they're no longer anyone's problem.
To a reservation.
Yep.
Yeah. And then in the end, they all try to fight back against the government or whatnot. And Picard basically uses the Prime Directive against them. Like, hey, figure out your stuff and we'll maybe think about letting you back into the Federation, or let you back, not back, but into the Federation. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, because President James Cromwell, which is why we sang the babe thing at the beginning, he's just like, come on, Captain, aren't you going to use your ship to do something? Like, quite right. Enterprise, beam us out of here. Let them have to deal with all the soldiers that have just stormed the Capitol.
Yeah, I know. I love it. We can't interfere. And I was like, yeah, that's right. You can't interfere. So what did you think of this guy? I've called him in my notes everything from Han Solo to Ted Bundy to River Tam. I couldn't decide how I felt about this character.
I thought he was a very sympathetic character. I thought he was a very dangerous character. And this episode has like a ton of action. I mean, it's a pretty simple plot because so much of the episode is just action and him like evading capture.
Lots of action.
like they try to beam him over to a prison transport, and he literally like puts his hands out against the beam and manages to like hijack the transport beam.
And
that was really cool.
Could he do that because he was enhanced, or is that something any human being could do?
No, I'm pretty sure it's because he's enhanced. They don't go into detail about what his enhancements are, but there's a lot of them, and I'm guessing one of them is that he can hijack transport signals.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah. And they didn't know that either, because they're like, yeah, let's just transport him over. And then all of a sudden he's like, no, haha, I run the ship now. What did you, so there's like, I liked the guy and I was definitely on his side. And when we talked about the next episode, I'm pretty much on the bad guy side too. But like the interesting part about this is that from the very beginning, I'm on the first page of my notes of like 5 pages because I write big and fast because I'm watching a TV show. And I have the note, which is just a ridiculous note, but it says, I'm getting Dr. Chilton vibes from Farmer Hoggett. And that was very early on. I knew that there was something going on with Farmer Hoggett. But you know who Dr. Chilton is, right? From Hannibal?
Yeah, from Hannibal.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, in the Hannibal TV show is who I'm specifically referencing. I know Chilton has been in a lot of different Hannibal type media, but I'm specifically talking about the Hannibal TV show. And he gave me that, like, I manipulated this situation from the background and I'm the bad guy from about the second he walked onto the stage after I wrote in like 4 lines big, that'll do pig across the top of my notes. But you get that creepiness from him right away. And so I didn't know whether to trust my instinct that he was gross or not. But then obviously he proves me right and he was gross.
Yeah, he's a politician. You don't trust politicians, especially ones that treat their veterans like that. I mean, this whole episode could have just been like, hey, Vietnam veterans should be treated better. They were drafted into war and given PTSD, and then you just dumped them on the street.
Yep, that's exactly what this was. I mean, because it's 1990, and you are a couple years younger than me, but I grew up seeing the Vietnam vets that were like super young with their green jackets, wandering the streets of Seattle, homeless, with nobody taking care of them. Okay, I couldn't remember like when I stopped seeing as many of those. I mean, there's still a lot of veterans, and America still treats its veterans like crap.
Afghanistan war. It's those 2. But yeah, it's an issue that seemingly just doesn't go away. But also, this was a Rambo episode.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I probably would have thought of that if I had seen Rambo in the last 30 years.
Of course, Rambo's about the treatment of, or First Blood specifically, is about the treatment of veterans coming home from the war. So,
see, when I watched it when I was 10 on Channel 11 with all the bad parts cut out and lots of commercials, I don't know if I caught that. But yeah. I thought, especially because the timing, because it was like right at the beginning of 1990, I really thought he looked like Ted Bundy. And there was this like conversation about him being a dangerous criminal and all these kinds of things. But then when he turned out to be sympathetic, I thought that can't possibly be on purpose. They wouldn't have tried to make a Ted Bundy character likable. So it's just kind of a coincidence.
I'm trying to remember what Ted Bundy looks like.
All the women in true crime groups think he's really hot, but to me, he just looks like a white guy. Yeah.
He's not unattractive. I'm looking that up. He's got kind of the pictures that I Googled, he's got kind of a serial killer eye look to him, but I can see the appeal.
Well, and he grew up in Tacoma. One of my friends that I've known forever, her grandma lives 3 doors down from his parents.
Oh, geez.
And so, like, this guy has been a part of my life for a long time, so maybe that's just why he's on my head, like, in my head when I was watching it. But I was like, man, he's very Bundy looking, like, and so I wondered if that was on purpose. But, of course, Ted Bundy just looked like a white guy from the era, too,
True. I mean, white people all kind of look the same.
Yeah, exactly. We did get a Geordie lost his visor trope. We didn't get to see him searching for it, but he did lose his visor.
He's knocked out and his visor's on the ground, and I noticed that and I laughed. And then, like, the next time we see him, he's just got him on. I'm like, wait, nobody else, like, he was like the first person to wake up in engineering after everyone was stunned. So, like, we missed that where he had to feel around for it.
I know.
Nobody
it was implied. They were too busy giving us 35 minutes of watching that guy run around the ship. I mean, that's my biggest complaint about this show, about this episode, is that it was fun for a while, and then it's kind of like, okay, yeah, we get it, he's smart, and then in the end, he's outsmarted by Worf, though. Which is what I wrote in my notes, apparently. Outsmarted by Worf.
He was outsmarted by Worf, but then he beats Worf in a fight anyway.
He does, yeah, that's true.
And, like, throws a bunch of empty crates at him. They have to be empty because they all just fall like they're made of styrofoam.
Well, you know, Klingons' one weakness is styrofoam crates.
Okay, that's so funny because that actually is a plot in a couple seasons that you. So,
I didn't know.
The fact that you would say that.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to that. That's great. Let's talk about the moment where Worf says to who does he say it to? He says, "You're personally responsible for the captain's safety."
Riker tells that to Worf because Worf
Riker
is beaming
says it to
down.
Worf. Yeah,
because,
and to me that was like
beaming down to the planet with
That's
all of
right.
because the Rambo manages to get all of the other soldiers broken out of the Lunar 5 penal colony.
Right. And then he's like, the captain's safety is your responsibility. And I thought that was such a Riker-Worf way to have a conversation because that would mean everything to Worf. And Riker knew exactly how to tell Worf this is like top priority. Right.
Well,
like,
of course, Worf knows that the captain's safety is his top priority because he's chief of security and he's beaming down with the captain into a hostile situation.
But it's more of an acknowledgement of you're going down into the shit and you're the only thing between the captain and his death or whatever. And I thought it was a good moment for like a split second between Worf and Riker, because I was realizing as I was watching that we don't get a lot of moments between Worf and Riker. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a good one.
So this is the first role that James Cromwell has in Star Trek. And I want to say he's done 2 more. You've seen Star Trek First Contact, so you know he plays Ephraim Cochrane in that one.
That's right, he does.
But he also plays an alien in like a season 6 episode. But I think the one through line that all of his characters have is they're all kind of jerks.
It was before he did Babe and became a vegan.
He still plays jerks after Babe, okay?
That's true, he does.
Babe is actually an exception in that he's just a kind, nice person in that movie. Most of his roles, he's a jerk.
Yeah, that's true. He is kind of a jerk. He's such a good actor, though. I find it interesting because I think of him as kind of like a big actor in my head, and then he shows up here and I just assumed it was like before. I haven't looked at his IMDb. I actually don't know about James Cromwell's career. I just, in my mind, think of him as a big person. So to hear that he plays an alien in season 6 is interesting. Mm-hmm. So did Babe bring his career to where I think it is? Is that what it is?
It might have. I know he was nominated for an Academy Award for that movie.
For Babe?
For Babe,
I love Babe. I can quote almost the whole movie. It's like, a dog that thinks it's a pig that thinks it's a dog. My brothers and sisters and I would say that to each other in the high-pitched voice like 20 times an hour when that movie first came out. I love Farmer Hoggett. I think that's all I have to say about this episode.
Yeah, well, I mean, a bunch of it was just action, and going into the next episode too, it seems like season 3 they have amped up the action on the shows a lot more. Like the first 2 seasons, things are a lot more slow and cerebral, but here they're like, you know what, let's have people punch each other. Then why don't we go ahead and get into the next episode?
All right. The next one that we have is called The High Ground. It's the 12th episode of the 3rd season. It's January 29th, 1990. It was written by Melinda M. Snodgrass and directed by Gabrielle Beaumont. I love Melinda Snodgrass episodes usually.
She's a good writer, yeah.
Is she the one? She's the one that loves delegations, right? I think she is. I think she's the one that loves plots about delegations.
I'm pretty sure she's the one who wrote Measure of a Man.
Yeah. She did Measure of a Man, Up the Long Ladder.
Oh, well, that was
named after her. I see a character scene on Akudagrams in the episode Up the Long Ladder was named after her, so it's called a Snodgrass. I misread what I was looking at, but yeah, and I usually love her episodes.
Yeah, Akudagrams are named for Mike Okuda, who was like the art director on the show. He designs the LCARS interface, like the little touchscreen interfaces, and whenever he hides little in jokes in them, they're called Akudagrams.
Oh, cute. That's cute. So the plot of this episode is that they are there and there's a lot of war going on, but our team is having a lunch in a nice diner while the war is going on. And then Dr. Crusher gets taken hostage.
Yeah, so it's kind of a space Israel-Palestine situation, I want to call it. Because, yeah, so it's a planet that has been besieged by a terrorist group. That and even like the cop of the city says that they started doing terrorism because like 70 years ago they wanted independence for their continent and they were denied it, and like she just says it like that, and I'm just like, well, that's a little like, it seems like you've got an easy solution here, but
yeah, I mean, my notes say 70 years ago we denied them freedom, and my notes say, oh, just that. That's all we did.
Yeah. But this episode is about terrorism, and it feels like it wants to say important things about terrorism, but kind of fails to.
It does fail really bad.
Terrorism is a complicated subject, and like it's hard to get all of the nuance in an hour-long episode. Now, thank God this episode came out before 9/11, because afterward there'd just be no nuance whatsoever.
No.
There's like some weird equivocation in the episode where like at the end, like Riker's like, oh, maybe that's how it stops. One boy just puts his gun down and refuses to kill. And I'm like, okay, but you're just accepting. He puts his gun down and then two armed guards go and grab him.
You're away. So he put his gun down to go be taken to prison, to go back to being a prisoner when he was trying to fight for his freedom. Yeah, I know.
You're accepting as a given the violence of the state while condemning the retaliatory violence of the oppressed peoples. And that's kind of like, you know, it's like a kind of a Hamas situation where, like, I don't support Hamas. Hamas is an awful organization that does bad things, but Hamas only exists because of Israel's oppression of Palestine and the way that they've set the Gaza Strip into like an open air prison. And, you know, like, you understand why in these situations people might turn to bad people who are going to fight off your oppressors.
Right. Because they're the only ones that are going to fight off your oppressors. So should we do the plot? Sure. Before I jump into my point about George Washington?
Yeah.
So the plot is Bev gets taken. They have this disease they need a doctor for. Turns out they've been using this teleporter to get them places. That's how they keep popping up and doing terrorism. And then they want to have Bev fix them, but it's coming from the teleporter. It can't be fixed.
And she's like, stop using it. And they're like, well, we need to use it because it's how we do our terrorism.
Right, because like even their base is in a hole in the ground that you have to use the teleporter to get in and out of.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the teleporter is not a teleporter. It folds space and time, like
it's a dimensional shift or something like that. And
the Elway theorem.
You know, everyone's just talking about, oh, well, we have to keep using it because we got to do the terrorism. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, okay, well, so one of the reasons that terrorism is an effective tool is because it doesn't require a lot of organization. Sometimes it's just a crime of opportunity, just planting a bomb in a random location. And it's just terrorists just look like other citizens until they've planted the bomb, and then something blows up. If you have a dimensional shift device that lets you teleport things anywhere, why not just bomb the governments? Why not just like blow up the president's office? Why not? Why are you doing these random things where you're, first off,
accidentally killing 60 children?
And also, why send anyone? Just teleport the bomb. Then you don't have to die from the horrible effects of the dimensional shift. It's like they just had no tactical know-how in here.
Or any, like nobody sitting around discussing what the right option to do. It was just long-haired dude that kind of felt like the first dude in the first episode. Just like, well, this is how it has to be. And his logic, which is not untrue, to be honest, is that one, you know, a dead martyr is worth 10 posturing leaders. And he's not wrong, which is exactly why in the end, when he gets killed, the lady's like, well, now he's a martyr.
Well, she said that she killed him because if she left him alive, it would have been a focus for violence at the prison as people tried to get him out. But that doesn't make sense either, because they could just dimensionally shift him out.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things they could have done. There was all sorts of that. Sometimes in these episodes and in the writing, it gets very singularly tunnel visioned. Like, this is the only thing that we can do. And I would blame the writers, but it's a very human trait, you know, to be like, oh, this is the only thing we can do, you know? And so there was a lot of options. And, you know, at one point he's like, you can tell he's getting a thing for Bev, who wouldn't, right? Like, but he's like kidnapped her and he's like drawing pictures of her and stuff. And he's obviously having compassion, because at one point he decides the way to get the Federation involved, which is not a bad tactic, to be honest, is to blow up the Enterprise. Right. And, you know, you're not harming your own people or innocent, you know, civilians from your own planet that way. And I kind of that was one of the best tactical thoughts that they had. But then Geordi saved the day, you know? And so it was, I don't know. But then he tries to look at Bev and be like, I'm not even from your planet. Don't know why I'd know the intricate details of United States history. But what about George Washington? Yeah.
Everyone knows Earth history when they need to. Right. Specifically American history, because that's what the audience knows. Interestingly, speaking of the audience, this episode was not aired in the UK. Do you know why?
No, why wasn't it?
Because Data was discussing times when terrorism has worked to enact political change, and one of the things that he says worked was the
Irish unification of 2024.
That's right.
Ooh, I saw that and I was like, that's an interesting one, because that's so near future and it was so violent in the 80s and 90s. You know, it was an actual thing going on.
Yeah, the UK was like, you guys are justifying the actions of the IRA. We're not airing this episode.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I thought that was interesting, too. And then that is in the discussion, in one of the only sane discussions of the entire episode about whether or not terrorism is right or good or ever justifiable, is Data's like, well, sometimes wouldn't we have to use violence to get what we want?
Yeah, and Picard says the stupidest lib shitty thing ever, where he says, well, I've never subscribed to the idea that political power flows from the barrel of a gun. And I'm like, yeah, it does, dude. Politics is violence. The existing power structures use violence to maintain those power structures. That's what we're seeing happen on the planet with the police state that's rounding up children to interrogate them.
Yeah, exactly. And then using George Washington to justify, and I'm sure that I'm about to say some things that'll piss regular people off, but George Washington was a terrorist, my friends. He was. Yeah. If you study American history at all, he was hanging people in the streets during the American Revolution for treason against America, a country he made up. That's literally terrorism.
It's a country that the Continental Congress made up. They hired him to be the general for it.
Right. And then he hung people for treason against a country that if you didn't immediately get on board with joining his new country he just created, he hung you in the streets in front of your children. That's terrorism, and that's what our country is built on. Please stop venerating George Washington.
He was a big proponent of asymmetric guerrilla tactics. You know, like he was like, look, we're not going to all stand in a battlefield and shoot muskets at each other. We're gonna sneak around and like take out high value targets with, you know, in God, I'm trying to think of the Hamilton line. Let's steal their cannons is what I was thinking. But there's also get the bullets out your gun, because they're sneaking through the dark with their guns out of their bullets in that line, or the bullets out of their guns, because they don't want to accidentally have one go off because they're sneaking around the army. I mean, there is so much like that kind of stuff. And George Washington was a great general, and he did end up winning against the British, and now we have America. Of course, the French helped a huge amount. A lot. Yes. I don't think we would have won without the French's aid. But I don't think we would have either. But it's
interesting to me that to this day and age in 2022, a few days after Independence Day, when there's been a lot of discussions because of what just happened with Roe v. Wade and everything about what is this country actually founded on, that I had to watch another episode that's like, oh, but we can justify it because George Washington did it. Nobody actually knows what George Washington did unless they study history. And he was a terrorist.
Chopped down the cherry tree, right?
Right. He cannot tell a lie. His teeth are wooden, not from slaves. These are all things that people have chosen to buy into so that they don't have to feel guilty about living in a country that was formed via terrorism. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean that most countries weren't formed out of some form of terrorism or war, but it's weird that we try to pretend ours wasn't.
There was a great moment where Finn, the terrorist leader, tells Picard, he's like, you federations pretend like you're neutral, but you're doing business with the government that's oppressing us. So you have tacitly picked a side by just accepting the on paper official government as opposed to the terrorist group. Even if it's at an unconscious level, you are taking a side in the struggle. It's like, that's why a lot of people want to boycott, divest, sanction Israel, because even though Israel is seen as the legitimate state in that area, their actions toward the Palestinian people, who a lot of them were there before a lot of Israelis moved in. Yeah, there's a whole situation there where you can't just be neutral unless you're just completely hands off and not interacting with anyone. I
believe Martin Luther King said that if you take neutrality and you're taking the side of the oppressor. I believe that's Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, because you are.
I think that was Desmond Tutu.
I think you're right, actually. Yeah.
But MLK said the same kind of a thing. But I think the specific quote you're talking about is Desmond Tutu.
Yeah, that makes sense. Same energy.
But ultimately, I think the episode just kind of, they didn't have enough to say about it. And it just kind of, I don't know, it was just like, I guess terrorism is a thing that exists sometimes. And just ended kind of ambiguously, but with that liberal, oh, well, maybe all it takes is one kid putting down his gun and then immediately getting arrested by the violence of the state.
It's very We Are the World. Like, oh, we solved racism. We solved world hunger. We all held hands and did a music video together. Let's pretend we don't know what's going to happen once the episode ends and the blue writing comes up on the screen, We
sang a John Lennon song on TikTok.
God, poor. I feel that was such one of those things. Remember, like, I try not to think about 2020 very much because it was a very weird time. But sometimes I think back to some of the weirdest things that happened during 2020. And the fact that happened is just so weird. But the fact that everybody turned around and said, this is bad, stop doing it. Like, there wasn't even anybody that was like, guys, they're just trying to make a difference. It was like, this is stupid. And I was like, so it makes it one of my favorite moments of 2020. Because we all came together and said, screw this. Like, we're all dying and we're locked in our houses and can't go to work. Gal Gadot. I don't know. I can't remember who else was in it.
It was basically every Marvel actor and a bunch of others. The Boys recently had an episode in which they parodied that, where they actually used some of the clips of some of the celebrities singing that song.
I'm sure they had to have gotten permission.
Yeah, and then had some of the superheroes singing it as well. And it was just The Boys this season has not been subtle in its parody.
That's so funny. I have not watched the show yet because I'm waiting for it to be done. You know how I am. I like to watch things all in order. And so I've just kind of been waiting for it to be done. Is this the last season? I thought I heard it was the last season.
I have no idea. I haven't.
But it has Jensen Ackles in it, right? The guy from Supernatural?
Yep, he's in this season.
Okay, so I guess I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the podcast, but I have watched Supernatural all the way through 2 times or something. Well, I watched the first 7 seasons of Supernatural 2 times, and then they just kept coming. I was done with the show, and the seasons just kept coming. And for a while, I tried to keep up with them, but then I was like, it just keeps going and it won't end. So anyway, I've been wanting to watch The Boys because of Jensen Ackles.
Yeah, I've only watched a couple episodes of Supernatural. The thing that I know Jensen Ackles from most is Smallville, when he was in that one season where he was Lana's boyfriend.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's so funny.
That was like one of his first big things. It was like, oh God, what's her face? Dr. Quinn, medicine woman, was his mom. Why can't I remember the actress's name?
Jane Seymour. The lady who does the jewelry now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. I don't know that you really need to see many episodes of Supernatural. The first season tries to be like a serious horror show, like it thought it was going to be a horror show. And then they realized that people responded to, you know, jokes and parodies and stuff a lot more. And so it just became a funny show, basically like a spiritual successor to Buffy kind of thing, where it was like super campy and stupid. And then they eventually had every single actor that wasn't Buffy or Willow, I believe, eventually has an episode where they're the bad guy. You know, they're the monster of the week. There's one episode where Cordelia and Spike are both, they're both bad guys in a Supernatural episode. And they even made, what's her name? Oh, man, Tara. They made Tara a vampire, which I just thought was hilarious. Anyway, we're on Buffy again. How did that happen on the Star Trek podcast?
We did a lot of bunny trails to get to here. So let's bring it back to the episode. There was something that I had wanted to bring up in the last episode because I got it confused with this one, but when we were talking about the action that they're bringing up this season. And the funniest thing is when the terrorist leader teleports onto the bridge of the Enterprise and Picard lunges at him and just decks him, and there's just this cut where you can very clearly tell that it's his stunt double doing it, like his face is in profile and everything, but it's just a really quick shot of him just like flying halfway across the bridge to just punch the guy.
That's so funny. So yeah. I think I remember. Yeah, I think I saw that and I was like, yeah, but they're not good. I mean, that's obviously because it's an action shot, right? Like, I don't know. There was a lot of weird action in this episode as well as the last episode. It's very, like you said, it seems to be going a little bit more actiony, which is fine because it makes it move a little bit faster. But at the same time, I like the like thought provoking stuff, you know? Mm-hmm. I do love the line, she's a Starfleet officer, she's my responsibility, because that's, you know, that's how it is. I just love Bev. You know, I love Bev. So as much as this episode sucked, it was cool that it was a Bev episode.
And Wesley got to save the day because Wesley's the one who figured out the dimensional shifting.
No, so he was just part of the team.
No, he's the one who figured it out.
That was his line. I was just part of the team. And I if we hadn't done the babe joke for our intro, I was going to say, and I'm Ari, and I was just part of the team, because I think it was such a cute Wesley. Oh, no, it's fine, Mom. I didn't save you. I was just part of the team, which just is so cute. There's a dead red shirt. We don't see that very often. I assumed that they stopped that like trope or whatever because of the jokes about red shirts.
Yeah.
But there was a dead red shirt.
There was a lot more just cavalier use of crew deaths in the original series, and in TNG I think they were like, well, we should probably treat deaths with a little more gravitas. But yeah, one of the terrorists just shows up and shoots a guy in a red shirt, and I think in total they said there was 4 dead people, and I think that's the biggest death toll we've had like of Enterprise crew members in a while. I feel like the biggest one that I can remember is in Q Who, when the Borg cut out a section of the saucer and 17 people died. I think that's the biggest. That's the biggest death event so far on the show. But yeah, 4 people's pretty big.
So the one thing we haven't talked about is that super cute lady with the cute suspenders. I loved her suspenders. She's like, they were trying to make her be like a like girl for Riker to talk to, but she was like representing the other state or whatever.
Right, she was the chief of police or whatever.
The cop lady, yeah. She had the cutest suspenders, and I knew when they didn't sleep together she wouldn't be the monster of the week, because that's my tell now. If Riker sleeps with them, they're probably the main bad guy. But I thought she was great, and I thought she was a very underutilized, in the way that the parts that she was given weren't very well written. I thought she could have been a much more compelling character, and obviously I texted you during it because she really reminded me of Amanda, our friend that we've had on before. She does look like Amanda, yeah. I sent Amanda the picture and I was like, how is this not you? But yeah, I don't know. The episodes were interesting and they're thought-provoking and they're making us have these conversations, but at the same time they're still trying to figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, it is still 1989 or 1990 at this point, I guess. And they're still trying to figure out how to be Star Trek in 1990. But man, thinking about, I wrote down the Irish thing about 2024, just thinking that was interesting because that's only 2 years away from now. But the whole point that they wouldn't even air the episode in the UK makes so much sense. I mean, so many people were dying and there was so much violence going on that it does seem that, and I mean, although 2024 was farther away from 1990, that's still not that far.
Yeah, and I remember when Brexit first happened, a lot of people were like looking at like this might be the thing that causes Northern Ireland to rejoin the Republic of Ireland. And I don't know. I know there have been issues with the because I know with Brexit that there was like concerns about the agreement, the border agreement, because obviously when they were both in the EU, it's just, well, you could just free movement across borders.
Right.
But I don't know what the current situation is there. But I think it would be cool if Ireland reunified in 2024 just to prove Star Trek right.
That would be interesting. And then we'd start like scoping, we'd be like pulling through all the dates, like, okay, what's going to happen in 2026 and 2029? Like trying to figure out if we can find any other things that are going to happen in the future.
Well, I do know 2024 is season 2 of Picard is set in 2024, and then there's a 2-parter of Deep Space Nine that's in 2024. So we've got at least 2 other things that are in the very near future.
Interesting. Okay. I like that kind of stuff. Like I like, for example, I grew up watching the Terminator movies. I Terminator 2 came out when I was like 13. So it was like, that was like one of those big movies that I was really excited to see. And the special effects were so cool. And when I got older, I went back and watched Terminator. And then, I've always been a big fan ever since. And so things that are set in the near future are something that I'm really interested in. I love turning on something and being like, the year is 1994 and in the future, this and that, and it's 2022. And I'm like, yeah, tell me about future 1994. I want to hear about it. As we all know,
year 2000.
Exactly. I mean, like 2001. Hey, I haven't brought it up in a while. But like 2001, I didn't see that movie until 2015 or 2016. So I was watching the past's view of what the future would look like in the future from that. And I think that's really cool and interesting when we set things in the future. I find that really interesting.
There's a term for that kind of a thing. Retrofuturism, which can either be just looking at old stuff and their idea of what the future would be, or deliberately crafting something in that retrofuturist style. Like Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow was a movie that was deliberately doing that kind of a thing. And then in Voyager, Tom Paris created his Captain Proton holonovel, which is done in black and white and looks like a 1930s sci-fi serial, like a Buck Rogers kind of a thing.
Oh, and that's cool. His version of Dixon Hill, then.
Yeah. So I like that. I like deliberately invoking tropes of older eras when we didn't know what we know now about science and technology. So it's like, well, obviously that wouldn't work, but it's so quaint looking back to see what they thought it might be. And
I think that's one of the reasons I like 2001 so much, is he tried to make it so realistic. Like the spaceship is a Pan Am space shuttle, and he's like, and that's where you get the famous scene of the lady with the hair bonnet and the pen, because that was a big deal that they made the pen float in 1968, and because she's a stewardess. And I think that's so interesting because he's like, what would the future look like if, it was done in capitalism and it moved forward to the year 2001. I find that so interesting, just like I find this kind of stuff interesting. But I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens in 2024.
Yep.
So speaking of future things that I find funny, people in the first episode, and I didn't really want to bring this up because it's not relevant to like the plot or anything. It's just me making fun of it. But there's this thing that happens in Star Trek in this series that since we've been watching it, where nobody knows how to say the word sensors.
Yeah, I've noticed
in
that.
the beginning of The Hunted, the first episode, like everybody says the word censor over and over again, and then Data finally says censors, as if he's like annoyed that they're not saying it correctly. And it really reminded me, and I just think this is an interesting parallel to in the first season of The Twilight Zone. There's an episode where a guy, I believe it's been a while since I've seen it, I think he's like, he has a whole entire planet as his prison, and they're bringing him a robot lady to be his companion. I don't understand why the prisoner needs a robot lady, but whatever. But the entire time, every single person in the episode says robot.
Robot.
Not robot, robot. Like ROWBUTT, robot. And something about that, when I hear them say censors, all I can hear in my mind is robot. And just so, I don't know, I just think that's really funny. But I asked somebody one time, why do they say robot in that episode? And they said, because the word wasn't even like popular. Like robots were so new to like the idea, like we had recently just created this concept that we could make a metal person that could attack people, that they had seen it in writing and they just made an executive decision that it was pronounced robot. You know, and I was thinking about that in these episodes just because, well, the censors thing. But then when we were talking about things in the future, like that's not even that long ago. And we didn't even have the word robot. And now it's such a prevalent thing in our fiction. You know, I just think that's so cool. And it's just something interesting about like the history of writing sci-fi and then coming up into like, I'm sure there's things in Star Trek that have influenced the way we name actual things in science. Right.
There's got to
be, right?
There's got to be. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's a lot of technology that Star Trek introduced that has become real, like the cell phones, like the clamshell cell phones were the communicators from the original series. You know, the pads in the Next Generation are just, we've got iPads now.
Right, yeah. And you know,
touchscreen technology and all that stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of
that was something I brought up at the very first. Remember, like first season, I said I think it's really interesting that there's like they're obviously like trying to set it up that touchscreen is the way. I think you said the way forward, which is it was. We just didn't know it in 1989 as normal people, you know. But I don't know. I love this stuff. I think it's so interesting. I can't believe I've become such a Star Trek fan that we can have these in-depth discussions and that I bought 3D chess and all that kind of stuff. But it's been a great addition to my life, and I'm very excited to watch the rest of it. Like, and I'm sitting around sometimes when people are talking about things like Picard, and I'm like, someday I'll get there. I'll get to watch you someday. But I'm really excited about Picard because, you know, I watched season 1, but I wasn't really paying attention because I didn't know any of the characters or anything. And so now I'm really excited to see what they do with them. That's my excitement about Picard for today. And I think that's all for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ari.
And I'm GayFesh.
And until next time,
live long and prosper.
Thanks for watching.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified when new episodes come out.
We're on Twitter at Rest Both Worlds.
Join our Patreon at patreon.com/restofbothworlds for bonus content and hear your name at the end of each episode.